Yeah. I'm your host, Chad Everett Brochures, and today we're going over trust. This is such a great word to go over, and I'm going to be bouncing all over this chair, by the way, today because I'm feeling antsy. Okay, so trust itself. First off, a definition of trust. So, first, consider what your definition of trust is. You've probably held that definition for some time. You probably have actually been told by many people in all sorts of different contexts and conversations about what trust is. But how many people, how often have you actually sat back going, I know what trust is? Now, trust itself, like trust as its definition, according to Google, is a firm belief in the reliability, truth, ability, or strength of someone or something. And in law, is an argument whereby a person, a trustee, holds property as its normal owner for the good of one or more beneficiaries. So, both of those elements actually have some value in this conversation. But for the intensive purposes of the conversation, I'm going to introduce a few different ways of looking at trust that may be able to open up a little bit more for people. Now, what people commonly deal with whenever trust is, first off, it's you don't always have a spoken agreement or a written agreement about what trust is, or whatever the attachment is, whatever the outcome should be. It could be that you walked into a situation and you assumed that the way that the situation should turn out is based off of your past experiences, your narrative, whatever your intended benefit would be, all of which, if you don't declare it, you're kind of throwing it into the whirlwind of results and emotional reaction. So if you go into a situation and you're like, you know what, I'm going to let this person run with it, or whatever that is, I trust they're going to do the right thing, and it doesn't happen, what is the cost that you have associated with that? Obviously, there'd be some emotional issues there, or challenges in the first and the upfront portion of it. And that could be, I really wanted that thing to happen. I really wanted them to, show me the affection I was looking for, or I needed them to get this job done by this time, even if you don't speak. And again, this is also this perspective's coming from initially the unspoken portion, the assumed value. You're like, oh yeah, they should be. They should have this done by a certain time. You find out they don't have it done, and now you're dealing with a backlog of work in order to hit the deadline that you have either spoken to somebody else, established with another person or a company, or get to where you need to be in order to meet your own deadlines and schedule that may not necessarily be an external agreement to anybody else other than you, direct, but you may have other things like, you're going to be home at a certain time to pick the kids up and take them to, soccer practice or whatever. And now you can't do it because you're set back because somebody else didn't live up to the expected outcome. These, again, are all in the outside of spoken agreements. Regular relationships have this as well, especially when you're looking at relationships of intimacy, partnership, those kind of things where you have like your boyfriend, girlfriend type concepts, husband, wives, that kind of thing. You will have the idea of trust built into that with the unspoken variables. Now you have the emotional aspects that could be where you go into this playground of negative emotions, where you start creating self-doubt or some sort of self-conscious element that's typically going to be born out of a narrative not necessarily that the other person made you feel that way. You also maybe, believe that they feel that way and continue to live your life that they feel a certain way about you, but they never actually spoke it. And it could be very well something as old as, you learned it at 3 years old from your parents. You never know at what point in time you were inflicted with that emotional state that just got buried under other things throughout life, but always seemed to kind of be behind the scenes pulling the levers and moving, the mechanics and the machinery that runs your mind. Costs of the spoken element of trust would be you said you would do it and you didn't do it. On the spoken elements of trust also could be you said you would have this done by this time, or you would meet me by this time, or whatever, and you're going to build your own timelines associated with that individual. Now, this is free of past experiences because I'm going to get to my working definition on trust in just a minute. That does take into consideration past experiences and projections into the future. But you'll have that emotional element that comes into it as well. But once it's actually, when it's unspoken, it's not always likely that you're going to continue to hold it against them when you realize you never actually made the agreement. When it's spoken, you're more likely to hold it against the person. It's a little bit more effort to forgive it than it is not to. Although they can play as their own referee in it, reminding you that forgiveness is ideal and they can do better and they can recommit. But there's, it just depends on the situation overall. Now, the spoken element does create the disappointments whenever they don't come through because you did actually have a spoken agreement that said you're going to have something done by a certain time. Now, they may either grotesquely overshoot their abilities, they may underestimate the time required or resources necessary in order to accomplish it, which, by the way, as you get to know me through my videos and my education pieces, you'll realize that time is one of our resources. But for right now, I'll speak about it as if it's a separate element so I can kind of highlight it. Okay. Now, my working definition for trust. By the way, both of the other ones give you some sort of projectable outcome in the future, but you also, because a lot of times we don't really discuss things about it other than the immediate emotional reaction where you're like, you broke my trust. Well, when you approach it that way, the other person may not be mature enough in their emotional state either to overcome it, and they may feel inflicted, like some sort of conflict internally, but you've afflicted some sort of attack onto them, and then they have to go into defense mode, and they're emotionally in defense versus like listening to you emotionally. They may be listening to you for defense tactics, so they know how to handle themselves in the situation, which means they are listening to you, but they're positioning their mind to create a defense versus listening to you from a clearing space that, a place of possibility that you could possibly give them, they could possibly come back around and be like, oh, I didn't realize it affected you that way. And I can see how that would get you. That would be more of a mature reaction versus the defensive reaction, which is you don't want to fault it against them and say, well, you're immature, because I promise you, if you take the mirror of life, you're likely going to look into that thing and say, I myself am not necessarily mature in every area. So going around having people feel like they're immature in certain areas, you're likely also, just whenever the situation arises that requires that level of emotion or that level of maturity, and it be held against you at that point. It's right that it is held against you at that point if you've done that to other people. Because if you intended other people to get better at it or not do it again, which is get better at it in its own way, I don't want you to ever do that to me again, means get better at it, don't do it again. But a lot of times people are like, crap, I have to watch out so that I don't do that again. Perhaps I need to learn how to deceive the moment a little bit better or avoid it in a way that doesn't upset that person. That's not really growth. That's tactful deflection and maneuvering, but it's not really growth. Now, but you are asking for growth. It's just if you come at it from the emotional, reactive, and aggressive side, you're likely going to turn them into more of how to hide things the right way. And what I mean by the right way is the likely way that you won't see it when they do it. All right. So my definition, to get to that, my definition of trust, and a working definition, which means that it does have applicability regularly for me and I don't lose sight of it. My working definition for trust is the ability to predict an outcome so that you're capable of delegating your resources that you intend to have a return on, so you can predict the outcome to protect those resources. If you do have an intention of protecting a time resource because you want to have more time to do something by investing your time right now, then you know that you're gauging your level of predictability for the other person in how they manage their time resource by what you just dedicated to them, or what the likelihood of you being able to get more time back. Something easier, they do more for you, and then you can sit back a little more often, whatever it is. It could also be money. You're predicting one of those resource values. If the person says, I'll pay you back, they don't pay you back, you don't have to banish the person from your life altogether. You just know to predict their behavior is more likely that they're not going to pay you back if you loan them money in the future. Doesn't mean that you completely remove you from that person. You just remove the element of money, and you might, and this is the better element about it, you might start looking into how you can help that person overcome the challenge that is causing them to be short on money, or have an attachment to something that costs more money than they have available. Whatever that is. It could be an addiction. It could be perhaps they need an investment value or something like it. Whatever that might be, that has you give a better opportunity to understand where they're coming from. The beautiful thing about my perspective on trust is this: I don't go around making people wrong for their past behaviors in a way that I don't interact with them. Tina says hi. I don't do that to people now. But what I do is say, okay, I know that if the person is going to lie to me, they're more likely to lie to me under the circumstances they just lied to me over. Doesn't mean that I give them full carte blanche. Yeah, I'm going to believe you again, but only in the areas that you didn't lie to me in. I just know that they're more likely to try to manipulate me in a way that would have them get what they want. Doesn't mean that I eliminate them. I just move my resources far enough away from them that I'm safe, secured, and taken care of, but I didn't make the person into a leper. I didn't remove them from my life out of fear of them contaminating my life, which in the reality of this is you're just trying to protect your resources. If it happens to be that they've misled you or they broke your trust on something emotional, then that just means that isolate or get down to the point of what the emotional element is that they have betrayed you in, that have broken your trust, and find out if you actually had a spoken agreement in the first place about it, or did you assume that they were going to react in a certain way? Because if you assume they were going to react in a certain way, you bear part of the responsibility, if not all of the responsibility. The more responsibility you take on in this scenario, the less likely you are that that's going to happen again. Because you can be like, look, it's the first time around and I should have said something, but let's do this moving forward. What I want from this is X, Y, and Z. And the other person can say, oh, okay, well, I can see why you'd want that. Or they'd be like, I'm not interested in that. Then you're like, okay, thanks for that part of my life. And, let's recommit, if need be, to a different type of relationship. Could be we're acquaintances now, we're not friends. It could be we're friends now, not lovers. It could be, well, we're not business partners anymore, but we're one of the other concepts of relationships. It's simple in that way. Now, that's my working... Hey, babe. Cut it out. Ring, ding, ding with the bell. Okay. Sorry about the intermission there. Bethina says hi again. Okay. All right. Now, if we want to be able to free ourselves from these things, there is a cost you pay if you do not overcome that trust element that you're missing. Now, you're going to have a pattern in your own mind that will be kind of drawn out by the individual in its own way. It could be that it's the type of music they like, the emotional imprinting that comes from having your trust betrayed. You may avoid specific things in the future because it's so close to something that resembles the person that broke your trust. A broken heart is a broken trust as well. In some way. It could be something as innocent as I just wanted you in my life for a long time, and the person said, I don't I've got to go, I have to move, or whatever it is. The trust that has really been broken there is the trust that they may be there longer than what you wanted. And you very well may have fabricated that as a whole. And as you get older, you start to look at it differently and then gain a different perspective in a way that forgives that person for something that they really don't need forgiveness over, but you're getting too close, or you're getting closer to forgiving yourself. So if you want to be able to overcome the debt of broken trust, because as soon as you put debt on somebody else in broken trust, you also put it on yourself. And how you do it is now you have to walk around like an accountant. You can't forget that broken trust, because otherwise you'll feel like you betray yourself some way if you let them do it again after you've already told them they won't do it again. You've told yourself they'll never do this to me again. And then it happens again. And then you're like, damn it, I know better, I shouldn't have let this happen. That's you feeling like you betray yourself. In order to let go of that is to not lock these ideas that my trust has been to betray, not lock that away in some sort of, emotional safe that's just waiting for you to open the door, and then it comes after you, it blows out and it gets you. You don't have to go that route with it, but that is paying a pretty heavy toll. Now, imagine walking around your entire life keeping account for every single time your trust has been betrayed or broken. You would be a pretty busy accountant if you kept that in the forefront of your mind. The likelihood is that it'll slide back a little bit depending on how important it was to you, how fresh it was, and how the scenario reminds you of it. And it may slide back enough that you look at it and go, oh crap, this has happened to me before. And now you've got the emotional experience of going, damn it, I did it again, which is the I betray myself again, or I betray myself, and the I got to get away from this. And it doesn't mean that the person's going to do what you expect them to do. It's the emotional imprint that leaves you to believe that they're going to do that. And they could very well just dress like somebody that's in your history that made you feel a certain way. They may listen to a type of music that's similar. They may use certain terms of endearment that remind you of that person. They could have all kinds of different variables about who they are, but it doesn't mean they're going to have the same outcome. They may very well be the person that needed to go through in the first time, that showed up and got the job done, or catered to you in a way that emotionally made you feel like you were taken care of, loved, and supported. But because they reminded you of that emotional imprint, now you're going to say, nope, can't get near that person. I got to stay away from them. And you've carried somebody else's baggage into the future. You've carried it and assigned it to them. It's like sitting at the airport and go, what bag are you waiting for? Oh, this bag looks like it's yours. Oh, you're going to want to take this out. That's not my name on it. No, this one's got to belong to you. It's very similar to that type of situation where you start assigning old baggage, old experiences to somebody new. Another interesting thing to consider. We all try to work in our best interest as best as possible. Now, our best interest could be we're playing a very dynamic game of chess where we're predicting the long-term outcome, which could be I want to treat other people the way that I'd like to be treated. Therefore, if I do that, the people that will be around me will be more likely to treat me the way that I want to be treated because I've treated them that way. And that's playing a multi-levels of a dynamic, different types of, it's just dynamic chess versus playing simple checkers, which is, I'm in my best interest, and as soon as I don't feel like you're in it anymore, I'm out. And it could be, I didn't like the way you got the mail. Done. I'm gone. That's a very simplistic perspective on it. But it also means both of those individuals I described are in their self-interest. It's just one of them is in their self-interest in such a way that they try to create a culture around them that is going to care the way they care. And then the other one is creating a situation where they only care about their own outcome, and they're training people around them to only care about their own outcome as well. That both of those individuals won't typically coexist at the same place at the same time for very long without coming up with another way of looking at each other, other than their immediate overview. Like the person that's looking at playing a very dynamic game of it could be like, well, I do want to treat that person the way that I'd like to be treated. And as soon as they don't get the reply or the response of being treated the way they want to be retreated, they kind of put the person back a little bit further away from them in enough of a way that that they feel safer. Not necessarily fully removing or ignoring the person, just putting them in a position that they're less likely to cause harm to any of the resources, including bodily harm. emotional, those kind of things. So both are acting in self-interest. It's just one wants a more dynamic experience where life is a lot more secure for them, a lot more predictable for them. And the other one is acting in the immediate self-interest, which is as soon as they feel somebody else needs to be able to cater to their needs or be able to support their needs, they're like, I can't even go that far. I got what I wanted, I'm out. And they're not really playing much of a game with that other person. So are you playing are you playing a game of trust checkers or a game of trust chess? For me, I like trust chess on many levels. This is not the intention to create a manipulative environment that I'm the one that wins all the time, because that would just be a dynamic version of the simple person. I only want for me, which is getting closer to narcissism or to being a full-blown narcissist. But those individuals are very self-interested. The other one is self-interested, but they care enough to the other person because they want the other person to care enough for them. On the narcissist side, I care enough for the other person so long as they think I care about them. But in reality, the long-term consequences are I'm really not that interested in them. I just need something right now. So, trust. We can overcome some of those challenges of you broke my trust by simply understanding people are in different places at different times of their life. Somebody you dealt with 10 years ago can very well be somebody new to you within the next 10 years. Like now versus 10 years ago. Life challenges come along. They may have an event in their life that teaches them that lying to somebody is less than ideal and more likely that they should stop lying. There's perhaps they were really bad with money at some point in time and now they're much better with it. Anything that you're holding against them from 10 years ago, they could very well be that person improved today. It just depends on how they've developed. It's really overall. It doesn't mean don't have a word of caution or an idea of caution going into their relationship again. But it does mean that it's better to keep your head on a swivel, but understand that everybody grows. You're not who you were 10 years ago either. I'm not, but I am the matured, more advanced version of who I was 10 years ago, because 10 years of life has happened to me. And my life's perspectives have shifted a bit. My philosophies of life have continued to evolve to life circumstances as they've happened around me. I have my core values, and then I have the way the environment has shaped me as well. My core values keeps me in that position for honesty, keeps me in that position to hold ethics, integrity, to do the right thing even when it's not easy. I actually have that on my computer, by the way. It's not a reminder that I need to read it to reposition myself. It's more of a reminder that I have used my integrity to hold that position for so long. But I trust that I will continue that. I'm also wise enough to know that things happen in life, but my preference is to never do something that I would consider that I would not want to be done to me. All right. That's it for trust for now. It doesn't mean that this episode is completely not to have a continuation. It's going to depend on the people that watch it. If they want me to elaborate, perhaps I got a little wordy through the process. I might have lost you in the process. I may not have touched on something that I do want to touch on that just slipped my mind in the meantime that's outside of my notes. There's all kinds of things that could add a second option or a second episode to this. But for the time being, trust has a dynamic opportunity. Somebody breaks your trust today doesn't mean that you need to hold it against them the rest of your life. If you do, you're going to carry that baggage. And you're going to try to get other people to carry it too. The interesting thing about that baggage, though, I'll use this in closing. The interesting thing about the baggage when you assign it to other people is it's 2 people have to carry it now. And 3 people, if you can get the other person that is responsible for putting the baggage in your life in the first place, the other person that was there whenever you decided the baggage was necessary. Now it could be 3 people carrying the same luggage. That really is just up to you. You can keep carrying it. And you can keep carrying every bit of life's luggage with you. Every single unmet need or every attachment that was, that did not come to fruition. So, your call. You want to carry that much baggage, expect that you're going to have an emotional exhaustion easy. You get to it very quickly. That's your call. I mean, I'm not to tell you not to do it. You may need to do it for a while before you finally realize you really don't need to. Oh, you can learn from those lessons. Those are lessons that you've refused to learn. That's all it is. All that baggage is lessons you've refused to learn. The interesting thing about it is life won't stop teaching you. It's just going to continue to try to double down on it. Learn it. Add some more weight to it. Make it more serious. Make it something a little bit more impactful. Maybe they'll learn their lesson now. And then the weight, the luggage gets heavier. The lesson gets more aggressive. If it has more of a resource cost. You do something today as an example that might be, it's not exactly breaking the law. It's not, it's bending a rule, but it's getting to that point where it's slightly unethical. Well, in 5 years, you keep getting away with it. You're more likely to push the boundaries to the point that it actually does go into breaking the law. But it started off, you refused to learn the lesson when it was a very, very minor situation, and you kept pushing it off, or somebody came and rescued you, or whatever it is. You didn't learn the lesson then. 5 years later, now it's something that actually can have a lawful reaction. And all you had to do is learn your lesson the first time and figure out that society has a different way of behaving in a way that will reward you if you just learn it. So, all right, that's getting into something else, but we can always go over that in another episode in the future. For the time being, this is an episode on trust. It's one of the Rumpelstiltskin words that I've coined as Rumpelstiltskin words, which means once you define it, you can actually put more control over it. But if you don't define it, it's more likely to run something in the background or run your life in its own way. Now, you don't have to have enemies where enemies really aren't. But if you carry around a lot of baggage, the other person may not even know that you have it because they didn't really understand the situation the way that you did. You didn't talk it out. You didn't come to a conclusion. Now the other person doesn't know it, and you're carrying the baggage for it, and now you're avoiding them, whatever it is. And it could very well just be a misunderstanding, which is also common. So with that, again, this is the episode on trust. This is Growing Up in the Wilds of Suburbia. I am Chad Everett Brochures. Share this video with the person in your life you know is challenged with something that this video will help them with. Watch it again. Comment in the comment section. Like the video. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell notification. It will let you know whenever new videos are coming up and going live. You can always jump in the chats and chat with me. You can always send me over some messages, catch me on one of my social medias or something like that to let me know you have interest in something that we would like to discuss further, different directions. I've had a couple of requests come in today alone, just asking for different options and directions and sort of inside of videos, which is probably what we'll see here in the next couple of weeks. Something on some of these suggestions that I've received. But until next time, guys, let's think critically. Let's look at life that we're all in this together. And stop carrying so much damn baggage. Let's get over that stuff, All right. With that, thank you again. And until our next video, I'm looking forward to it. Have a wonderful and empowered day. Let's create the life